Hello my dear anime friends. In this video I will be giving you a recap of the movie called Steam Boy. Sit back and enjoy. The world has achieved significant advances in steam-powered technology in an alternative 19th century. Dr. Lloyd Steam and his son Edward uncover pure mineral water in an Icelandic cave. They believe they can harness it as an infinite supply of power for steam engines. They perform an experiment in front of investors based on their theory. Lloyd, desperate to be shown correct, pushes the test to its limits, forcing Edward to be immersed in freezing gas. The only object that appears to be undamaged when the lab explodes owing to the enormous pressure is a spherical contraption. Ray Steam, Edward's son, works as a maintenance worker at a fabric plant in Manchester. He saves the machinery from destruction, but the factory owner still goes crazy at him for causing the water heater valve and pipes to burst. As he rushes out, the ungrateful owner threatens to withhold it from his salary. On his way home from work, he stops to read a sign advertising an upcoming event in London called the Great Exhibition. Cliff, his friend, makes a joke at him after hearing about the incident at work. Ray shows him a brass valve he received as a memento and that he can still use. Meanwhile, at the train station, Lloyd arrives in Manchester but uses a different exit when he notices some suspicious men looking for him. Ray is still on his way home when he gets tormented by some rich kids. They insult his father and grandfather, so he retaliates by striking the primary culprit on the head with the brass pipe, instilling terror in the others and causing them to flee. Back at home, in Ray's room, is one of his numerous mechanical creations. As he analyzes the blueprints for one of his projects, a steam-powered mono-wheel cycle, he checks the brass pipe. At supper that night, they are joined by Thomas and Emma, whose parents have gone to work in Blackpool. Ray's mother refuses to give us food as punishment for hitting the boys earlier. He complains and explains, but his words fall on deaf ears. The next morning, he works on his bike, but he is stopped by the postman, who hands him a heavy parcel from his grandfather. They all gather to open the box. They are shocked to discover a spherical contraption, as well as schematics and a note outlining what they should do with it. They hear a knock on the door while Ray checks it. His mother greets the two guys who were waiting for Dr. Lloyd at the station. They presented themselves as Alfred and Jason from the O'Hara Foundation in the United States. She expresses gratitude for everything they have done for their family, and they reciprocate by recognizing the job the Steams have done for them. She welcomes them into the house since she believes it is a friendly visit. They enter the dining area and spot the device. As Jason looks around, Alfred verifies Lloyd's absence from the house. Ray inquires whether they are from the Foundation, and Alfred confirms. The young inventor refuses to give them the gadget, saying that it was given to him by his grandfather with strict instructions. Dr. Lloyd Steam arrives just in time to reinforce his orders and labels them as villains. While they quarrel about who owns the device, Grandpa Steam confesses that Ray's father died as a result of it. As Alfred notifies his partner of Lloyd's presence, the doctor instructs Ray to deliver the metal ball and the blueprints to Mr. Stevenson, who is a well-known inventor. Ray's mother and grandfather grab the Foundation agents as he prepares to flee with his latest invention. Jason summons additional agents, who follow him with a tractor after demolishing a portion of the home. The pursuit ends on the train track when a passenger called David notices the young inventor in distress and rushes to the control room, where he stops the train, forcing the tractor to wander off. David, it turns out, is a Robert Stevenson employee who is riding on the train with him. He's just the person Ray is looking for. With the blueprints in his hands that Ray lost during the chase, he asks the young inventor for his name and recognizes the Steam surname. The escaping tractor shoots a red flare, sending a signal. The train carries on its journey while Mr. Stevenson updates Ray on the situation. Stevenson worked with Ray's dad in the past and has received a letter from his grandpa requesting a meeting. As Ray is about to give the device to his dad's old rival, Team O'Hara rips the train's roof off. After a brief exchange, the Foundation agent sees Ray and the device before fleeing by airship. Back at the Steam residence, the neighborhood pitches together to help clean up the destroyed house. Mr. Stevenson investigates and concludes that Dr. Steam wanted to demonstrate the device's potential to them. Meanwhile, a furious Ray is transported to London and presented to Miss Scarlet. She is the granddaughter of the Foundation's chairman and of similar age. Simon introduces himself as the administrator as well. To his shock, Ray's father joins them at the meal. He also learns that his injuries in Alaska left him terribly scarred and thus mechanized. Edward is currently working on the Steam Castle alongside O'Hara, a complex facility totally powered by 3 devices known as steam balls, one of which was sent to Ray. The castle and his father's idea of utilizing it to enlighten mankind captivate the young inventor. He offers to assist with the project's completion. While doing so, he has a love-hate relationship with Scarlet, who is drawn to him. Meanwhile, Mr. Stevenson meets with a high-ranking commander of the British Navy to discuss the O'Hara Foundation's dubious history of providing weaponry to both sides during wartime. Back to Ray, he attends to a pressure leak in the castle. He's caught off guard to find his grandfather there. His grandfather is even more surprised to see him in there. He appears to have been captured by the Foundation as well, but he has escaped from his cell and is now attempting to sabotage the castle. He tells his grandson that the Foundation's actual goal for the exhibition is to sell weapons to Britain's enemies. Lloyd leads Ray to a secret armory stocked with gigantic steam-powered battle devices designed by Edward. The young inventor struggles with the moral contradiction of being a scientist and how to make a major contribution to the world without succumbing to pride. As a result, he is torn between siding with his father or grandfather. They themselves have become estranged from one another. They blow a pipe to create a distraction, allowing them to approach the castle's center. Edward confronts his father on his idea of science's purpose. With Simon's consent, Alfred shoots Lloyd in the leg while he is releasing one of the steam balls for Ray to take. He is pursued by Jason and several of the workers, but he eventually escapes by ziplining into the sewers. A blast of water knocks him into the river, but Jason notices him and continues to fire at him, much to Scarlett's displeasure. The arrival of the British Navy leads the Foundation to retreat. Even with one steam ball missing, Edward is desperate to prove to his kidnapped father that everything can still work. The show begins the next morning. David confirms the arrival of military leaders from around the world at the Foundation's pavilion. Ray gives the device to Stevenson and divulges the knowledge he acquired in captivity. For their wrongdoing, the British troops and police raid the O'Hara Foundation, but the Foundation utilize it as an occasion to show off their cutting-edge weapons to their clients. They send forth their steam troops, who rapidly force their assailants back. When Stevenson responds with his own steam tanks, the situation escalates into a war zone. In order to continue the show, Simon orders the deployment of the Air Corps, which provides outstanding air support for the ground soldiers. Meanwhile, in Stevenson's workshop, Ray discovers that he is no better than the Foundation because David is also using the steam ball to improve his company's tanks. The young inventor, disillusioned, takes the gadget, but he is assaulted by David. They are cut short when an air trooper blasts the workshop, allowing Ray to collect the steam ball. Back at the castle, Edward is anxious to share his scientific accomplishment with the rest of the world. He directs that the fortress be brought up to full power. As a result, the superstructure rises and sheds its ornamental outer shell, exposing itself to be a huge floating castle. With the final steam ball in his possession, Ray uses it to create a makeshift aircraft to reboard the fortress. The Royal Navy and Stevenson attempt to defend London from the freezing effects of the floating fortress, but to no avail. Upon boarding the castle, he meets Edward, Scarlett, and Lloyd in the castle's control room. Lloyd confronts his son about his actions before shooting him with a stolen gun, but he disappears in a cloud of steam. Meanwhile, on the fortress, Simon and the military officers flee on a blimp while fending off employees who are also attempting to board. The lack of the third steam ball leads the castle to deviate from its intended path. It has become unstable and is on the verge of exploding over the city. Grandfather and his grandson scramble to reroute the castle over the River Thames. Edward, whose metal body deflected the gunfire, resurfaces from the steam to help them. Ray reinstalls the final steam ball. He makes his way to the control room to make a final escape with Scarlett on an emergency jetpack. In the interim, Edward and Lloyd use the extra power to steer the fortress over the river. The castle detonates in a spectacular ice explosion, saving the city from destruction. The father and son also manage to escape. In the aftermath, a montage shows Ray returning home and later becoming a global superhero utilizing the castle's jetpack gear, while his grandfather Lloyd introduces Ray to electricity but eventually dies. His father Edward becomes a business conglomerate. Scarlett grows up and becomes a well-known pilot. Meanwhile, paratroopers and zeppelins are being used to fight the Great War. The end.